Welcome to the King Films 2022 March Madness bracket predictions here, and let's start with the West region, which has number 1 overall seed Gonzaga. I am, of course, going to have them winning their first game over Sunbelt representative Georgia State. And we've got a tough 8-9 matchup to predict. Really wanted to go with Boise State here after they won in their conference tournament and the regular season title for a loaded Mountain West, which surprised with 4 teams in the bracket. But I'm going to have to go with Memphis, even though they lost to Houston in that AAC championship. I think that they have been playing better down the stretch ever since those early losses in about January. Memphis has been a different team, minus that one game they were able to get marquee win over SMU, who was deemed one of the replacements. That's a very good team. Now they'll be playing a Boise State team who is hot in their own right, beating 2 of the best Mountain West teams over their past 2. But I'm going to have Memphis here in a toss-up. But regardless, I'm going to have Gonzaga beating the winner of that game either way. So the Gonzaga will be our first Sweet 16 team in here. Then we've got 5 Connecticut against New Mexico State, representative out of the WAC. And I'm going to have Connecticut here. Got a tough draw losing to Nova in that Big East semifinal, but I think they may have an even tougher draw here, not against New Mexico State, but in their second round, in which they will play Arkansas, who I've got beating a good Vermont team that can shoot it well. They score a lot of points, but I think Arkansas is just the hotter team here, even though they lost and quite frankly got wiped by Texas A&M. I think that gave them the wake-up call they needed to be able to show up here. In that second round matchup, 5-4, I'm going with Arkansas again. And I think that this will be a very competitive matchup as the seed predicts, but I'm going with Arkansas here. I think they played the tougher strength of schedule throughout the whole year. They're battle tested, and I think they're ready to beat this Connecticut team. And then I'm going with Gonzaga to finish off Arkansas. I think Arkansas will have had 2 tough games to this point. They'll get the week of rest before they play Gonzaga in Portland, but gonna have to go with the Bulldogs here. They're just too talented top to bottom in this team. Then I'm going with Alabama over Rutgers / Notre Dame winner. And even though I think Rutgers should not have gotten into the tournament, I will pick them to beat Notre Dame in the play-in game. So Alabama over Rutgers here. I could honestly see this one going either way. Of course, Alabama got upset in the SEC tournament by number 11 seed Vanderbilt, who is a lot worse than either of these teams. So Alabama definitely not the hottest team right now, but I've got them cleaning up the 11 seed here. But they will face a tough test when they have to take on Texas Tech. I have Texas Tech beating number 14 seed Montana State out of the Big Sky. I just think Texas Tech is a lot better in this matchup. In terms of the 6-3 matchup against Alabama, again, this is one that could go either way as well, as Alabama won their game in the Big 12 SEC Challenge against Baylor, but granted that game was at home for them, so I'm going to have to go with Texas Tech here in 3-6 matchup. Give me Texas Tech to the Sweet 16. Then we've got Michigan State against a tough Davidson team out of the A10 conference. They were not able to grab their conference tournament, so they dropped to the 10 seed, and quite frankly I'd rather be Davidson here at the 10 seed than having to face Gonzaga in the second round, because I think Duke is a far inferior opponent, but we'll talk about that. I've got Michigan State beating Davidson. I think they've got the hardest strength of schedule. Big Ten was able to get 9 teams in this year, and while I don't think it was as good of a Big Ten as last year, and they got quite lucky in the selection committee, I think that Michigan State is still a great team here, and they will beat Davidson, even though they've been up and down the stretch of this season. And then I've got Duke to wipe out Cal State Fullerton in the first round. Then we go with the 7-2 matchup. I'm going with our first big upset here. I'm going with Michigan State over Duke. This is not as much about how Michigan State has been playing good. In fact, they haven't at all, but neither has Duke really. A good Virginia Tech team they came across, but there's really no excuse to be losing to an 11 seed just like that. I mean, Michigan State, of course, has lost to teams all over the board, but I still think that they can get it done against Duke here, and that would give Texas Tech a very easy matchup in the Sweet 16 to get themselves to the Elite 8. I think that Texas Tech will beat Michigan State here. I think it's just too unlikely that Michigan State would win all these games in a row. Then, moving on to the South region, we've got number 2 overall seed Arizona. I've got them wiping out Wright State / Bryant. we'll see who wins that game there. I'd have to say Wright State if I had to pick it right now. We've got Seton Hall against TCU. I think TCU will wipe out Seton Hall in that matchup. Even though I had Seton Hall getting quite far in the Big East tournament, they did not perform to my expectations, and I think that TCU is the better team here. Arizona better watch out for them in the second round, and in fact, I'm going with TCU here. TCU was able to beat Kansas one time in 3 tries, and they were able to wipe out Texas in that Big 12 tournament. I don't think Arizona is ready for this level of competition. Arizona is by far the better team, but I think TCU is a bit underseeded here at the 9 spot, and I've got them taking down number 1 Arizona in the second round. Then UAB against Houston. UAB has been a solid team the whole year out of a loaded Conference USA. They didn't get any at-large teams, but UAB was able to clean it up after a 3 overtime showdown with Middle Tennessee, a thriller. And I've got them beating a good Houston team here. Remember, Houston is not flawless. They've lost 2 of their best players, and they just play a lot of defense to where if a team has a solid shooting night, which I think UAB can, I think they can beat Houston in this one. And then Illinois against Chattanooga. I'm going to have Illinois in that one. And then to see who will face TCU, I'm going to have Illinois. I just don't think that UAB can pull it off again. UAB a couple years ago, I think it was 2016, was able to grab that first round upset. They ended up playing underseeded UCLA, and they lost that. I think the same thing happens here. Illinois to the Sweet 16. Then Colorado State, Michigan. And I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to be taking Michigan here. It might even be a popular pick to have the upset here, but I've watched a lot of Colorado State games this year. They wiped out everyone in their out-of-conference slate. They went undefeated out of conference. I think Michigan will not be ready for this game after getting blown up by Indiana in that Big Ten tournament game. So give me the 6th seed Colorado State here. And then Tennessee against Longwood. I don't think this one will be particularly close. Tennessee was able to win that SEC tournament, and usually that means that the team will not perform in the NCAA tournament, but I'm going with Tennessee here just to beat Longwood, and then I have them beating Colorado State. I just think they're the superior team here to a good Colorado State team, but not a great one. Then 7-10 matchup, I'm going with Loyola Chicago. Loyola has perennially been from the 11 seed to the 8-9 game last year, so I think they're going to win this one. They just turned it on in March. They were able to win the MVC tournament. And then Villanova, I've got wiping out Delaware in that one. Then I think that the run ends here for Loyola Chicago, but I'm going to hedge my bets. I think that Villanova will win, but as you'll see in my Sweet 16 matchup, I do have Tennessee beating Villanova. So if Loyola Chicago is able to beat number 2 seed Villanova, I'm not really losing too much there. And then Tennessee against Illinois, who I have beating TCU in the Sweet 16. I'm going to go with a hot Tennessee team right now. They were able to beat Arizona at home earlier in the season too. Granted, that was at home, but even if it's Arizona going up against them, I think that TCU can get it done. They played a rigorous schedule in that SEC this year. Let's move on to the bottom of the bracket where we've got Kansas, and I'm going to have them winning the 116. We don't really even have to talk about that. Then I've got San Diego State beating Creighton. When Creighton played Colorado State out of conference, it was not a great game. Colorado State won, and San Diego State here I'm going to have prevailing despite Creighton's run in the Big East tournament. I think that they've run out of luck. San Diego State put up a great fight getting to the Mountain West final as well, where they lost to Boise State. So give me San Diego State here, but either way I think that they will get wiped out by a Kansas team that is just starting to get healthy and get their feet under them. Then Iowa Richmond. I don't think this will be particularly close. Richmond was able to be a bid bandit in the tournament in this 5-12 matchup. I don't think they have a chance though. Give me a hot Iowa team to win that one. Then Providence against South Dakota State, and I think that South Dakota State might win this one by double digits. South Dakota State shoots the 3 very well. Providence is just starting to become cold. They've been lucky the whole season. I think this is the easiest upset you could pick. Give me 13 seed South Dakota State. And let's let the upsets continue here with Iowa State, who I think is vastly underseeded at the 11 seed against a 6 seed LSU that just lost their coach. They just lost in the 4-5 matchup in the SEC tournament. Not much could be going worse for this LSU team, and I think it will continue with maybe the allegations going into the offseason as I see their season ending after the first round. Then we've got Colgate, number 14, over number 3 Wisconsin, who is reeling as of late. Remember, Wisconsin was able to lose to Nebraska. Their only real wins was that really close one over Purdue, and then they were handed a loss in the Big Ten tournament. So give me Colgate here. They shoot it well. They were up by about 15 on Arkansas before they choked last year. I think they've got the experience now. They all got a year older, and I think they can beat number 3 Wisconsin. And then I'm going to take USC over what I feel is an overrated Miami team. They're just not that good, and I think the ACC at large was probably overrated a bit here, getting Notre Dame into the field as well. The one team is the exception is Virginia Tech. We'll talk about them later. Then I've got Auburn wiping out Jacksonville State. So no 15 seeds, no 16s winning for me, but we've got the 14 in Colgate. In that second round matchup, I'm going to have them losing to Iowa State. I just think it's too unlikely that Colgate could even win that first round matchup, so I'm going to go with Iowa State. But then I'm going to have USC upsetting Auburn. Auburn is a very good team, don't get me wrong, but they're not playing their best basketball by any stretch of the imagination right now. Now, neither is USC. They win a lot of close games, but I think that they can make this one a tough game. Remember when USC was rated number 5 in the nation? So I think that some teams will miraculously get hot. USC, I feel, is one of those. Then in the Sweet 16, probably the worst matchup in my whole projected tournament, USC against Iowa State. The 7-11 matchup. I'm going to go with USC to the Elite 8. Where they will rematch Kansas, who I've got beating Iowa. I think that one could go either way, but then I'm going to see Kansas getting revenge on USC after last year's second round game. Let's move into the final quadrant before we get into the Final Four with Baylor beating the 16 seed there. North Carolina, I'm going to pick to beat a Marquette team that has quite frankly fallen off as of late. Marquette is a team that can beat anyone in the nation, but they can also lose to almost anyone. I think North Carolina, just because of their vast amount of wins, is just going to be the more reliable team in this matchup. Then we've got St. Mary's facing a 12-seed combination of Wyoming/Indiana, and I think St. Mary's would beat either of those teams that they face. I think they will face Indiana there. Then 4-seed UCLA taking on Akron, and I think this one won't be particularly close for UCLA. Akron was able to win their conference championship by 20 over Kent State, but UCLA St. Mary's in the second round. I think UCLA is going to win this one by quite a lot. It is the West Coast matchup, so we'll see what happens. But I've got UCLA facing Baylor in the third round. Baylor, I've got wiping out North Carolina. North Carolina was able to beat Duke, but as I said before, I don't really respect the ACC all that much. Let's get into the bottom part of the bracket where I swallow my words and take 11 seed Virginia Tech over number 6 seed Texas. Texas is not playing their best basketball. They did force overtime against Kansas on the road, but their early loss in the Big 12 tournament is something that I can't really make up for. They were in this exact same spot in the bracket last year as the 3 seed and lost Abilene Christian. And while I would think they wouldn't want to let that happen again, Virginia Tech is just a way hotter team than them right now. Give me Virginia Tech here. Purdue, I've got wiping out a 14 seed Yale out of the Ivy League. And then in the 7-10, I'm going to have to go with Murray State. San Francisco does play with a high-paced, high-powered offense, but Murray State does too. This would be a great game, but I think Murray State will prevail. They only have the 2 losses on the season. Then, number 2 seed Kentucky will wipe out St. Peter's in that first round matchup. Let's move on to the second round here. And we've got Purdue over Virginia Tech. I think that Virginia Tech's magical run ends here. I don't think Virginia Tech would have made the tournament if they did not beat Duke. Texas A&M suffered a similar fate, but they did not beat Tennessee in that SEC final. They find themselves out of the tournament. Then number 2 seed Kentucky ending Murray State. I think that will be the end of Murray State as well. Oscar Tshiebwe and friends with Kentucky are just too talented. I think the same will happen to Purdue here. And Purdue was a team going into the bracket that I thought might make a Final Four, but this is just probably the most stacked quadrant. As you can see, my Sweet 16 is the 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds, and I'm going with Baylor at the 1 seed to beat UCLA, although I could see that one going either way. UCLA did not really show me what I needed them to in that Pac-12 championship, but arguably Baylor didn't either, getting upset by an Oklahoma team that we don't even see in the bracket, and then Kentucky would beat Purdue. So in the Elite Eight, I'm going with Baylor there to make the Final Four. So we've got the Final Four here, 3 1 seeds and a 3 seed, but if you really look at the bracket, there's a lot more upsets that I have happening than that. I'm going with Baylor over Gonzaga here in this first game in a rematch of last year's national championship. I think that Baylor is the better team, and if they do make it this far, I think that they will be the hotter team. And then Tennessee, Kansas, I'm going to have to go with Kansas here, as Kansas is just getting hot right now. Remy Martin is back for them, making a big difference as we saw in the Big 12 tournament. But I think that Kansas will ultimately fall short in the national championship. Give me Baylor to go on repeat, and I think that this may be one of the least popular 1 seeds to win, but I'm going with it. Give me Baylor to win the national championship. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and comment your predictions and disagreements below.